So again, when you begin to transfer your stitches, you're going to work from the right end, and these three and these three will stay as they are. So the first stitch you're going to transfer is right 51 from the ribber to the main bed. So that's 51. You put that on your double-eye transfer tool, and so you'll see I have a mark there on my ribber bed, and I'm going to transfer the needles from the ribber to the main bed up through this needle, which is 41. And of course, this is a little fidgety, so you do want to be careful. Actually, one thing that does help is if you make sure all your latches on the main bed are open. So if you have one of those homemade credit card cut on an angle things, that's a good method to use. So this is the last needle in this group that's going from the ribber to the main bed. Okay, so I've got all my needles, all my stitches transferred, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 groups. 5 on the ribber and 5 on the main bed. And you see I've got all my empty needles are firmly out of work. And this is very, very important. Make sure that before you start to knit the pattern, you put your ribber back in half pitch. Otherwise, you're going to have a kind of a wreck. And also, at this point, you want to put your row counter at 0. Because we're going to be knitting in groups of 16 rows. So, the way we begin, you're going to push all the needles in the ribber into work. And this first row is going to be a little tough because all the needles have 2 stitches on them. So here we go. So just go slow and careful. Keep an eye on everything.
Wow, I didn't know this was going to be that's so hard to start.
That's really the only row that's so hard. It's like I say, everything has 2 stitches on it. So that's one. Now we're going back the other way. We're going to knit 16 rows. Again, you want to make sure that everything is knitting off properly. I've only ever had trouble with the main bed not knitting properly, and your fine knit bar solves most of that. So
Go ribber.
now I'm going to go on and knit 16 rows total. I think I've got my mass tension a little too tight, so I'm going to loosen that.
Does everyone know what that means?
Yeah, it just
I've
This-
never heard of a mass tension.
masked.
Yeah. I just dropped my T, sorry.
Oh, yeah, this just regulates how the yarn flows. And sometimes if you're having a hard time knitting, it's because your mass tension is too tight. So if you loosen it, the yarn moves more freely through the tension.
Gotcha.
So
Is there any sort of alert when you know you're done? With your 16 rows?
The row counter.
But it's not going to go ding?
No.
Okay.
Okay, now we're going to drop the first set of stitches. And they will be dropped from the ribber. So I'll start over here. This is where your marks come in handy because you can see. Don't be afraid. Just drop these stitches. We'll work our way across the bed. You're right. Don't fall off another stitch. Come on. Part of life, y'all. Jesus. There we go. Okay. Oh, because I already dropped these. Okay. So drop this group. Nope, not you. So that's why one of the reasons the marks help. Because I push this guy out and I don't want to drop that stitch.
If you have marks, you would have to be counting every one, huh?
I mean, not exactly. There are visual cues. Because you're always dropping the stitches in the groups where they're on both beds. So, for example, this is my in needle on this group, and I'm going to drop the stitches on the ribber. So I would know that this needle would be the first one, and because I've got 3 needles in work for my full needle rib on the edges, that would be. But I just find it's faster. Okay, now I have found this next step to be very important, and that is to hang claw weights underneath on the group of bubbles that you just dropped from the ribber. You only have to do this when you're dropping stitches from the ribber because, again, it's really the main bed that has a problem knitting off stitches, and it's the main bed that's going to be picking up new stitches on this next row. So I've climbed up under here and hung my claw weights on each of these sections where I dropped the stitches off the ribber bed. And that's because these stitches are now quite loose because they're double sized because we dropped stitches there. And they'll knit off better if there's a weight there. So the next step, I'm going to put all these needles into work on the main bed. And it's 16 rows. So here we go. And this is where it's especially, again, important to just make sure everything knitted off properly. And just try to keep an eye on things as you go, particularly for the first few rows of each group. I don't know if you have to follow me across the bed every time.
No, it's kind of fun.
People might get seasick.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking it's like the a stormtrooper in a room, not necessarily a Roomba, but a utilitarian stormtrooper.
And 32. So we've knitted our 16 rows. And the next thing to do is to drop the needles from the main bed. So we're going to do that now. And you can see again where my marks are. Push all these needles out.
Yeah, your hand's in the way. So.
Drop the stitches. And remember, you're always dropping the groups of stitches where both beds have stitches on them. Where it's just one bed, don't drop those, you'll be so sad. Okay. All right. So then we just proceed. Now you put all the needles in the river bed back into work. And we're going to knit 16 rows and we'll drop those. And then I'll do a little more off camera and then we'll come back and I'll show you how to finish it up. So we're going to knit 16 rows now. And last row. Now we're gonna drop all these stitches on the river bed. A lot of times I just go across and put everything out of work up into the E position, whatever it is on this machine. And then go back across and drop everything.
Well, why wouldn't you use that fancy tool that you just used to lift everything up?
Oh, this guy?
Yeah. Or
I mean, you could make something that was the right size,
gotcha.
but
Gotcha.
it's just not that hard to do. So now can we go down, 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 so I can try to demonstrate moving these weights. So you got your claw weight, you got your bubble.
Let's pause.
So now we're gonna do the best we can to show you moving these claw weights up. And again, remember you only have to do this when you've just dropped stitches off the ribber. So I always pull down a little on the bubble to help the stitches drop, and then get the claw weight as close as I can to the beds. And of course you can't really see what you're doing all that well, but
Neither can I.
that's all right. Oh, I see a boo-boo. There's a boo-boo. I made a boo-boo. I dropped a stitch when I was doing my training.
Cut.